Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa, and today I'm talking about something that affects almost every nonprofit out there, even the ones we rely on for after school programs, food banks, or community clinics. It's called the overhead myth, and I'll show you how a policy called indirect cost reimbursement helps fix the funding gap that nonprofits face every day. The idea, called the overhead myth, started because people thought nonprofits should spend almost nothing on things like rent or admin. They wanted every dollar to go straight to helping people. That sounds nice, but it's not how things actually work. Nonprofits need buildings, staff, and systems to do their jobs. Without those, the programs wouldn't even exist. According to the National Council of Nonprofits, this myth has made it harder for organizations to be honest about their real costs, and that's a problem. So, how do we fix it? The federal government created a rule called OMB Uniform Guidance. It basically says that if a nonprofit gets federal grant, they have to be reimbursed for indirect costs, things like rent, admin, and tech. If they don't have a special rate already, they get a default 10%. That's huge because it helps nonprofits cover the real costs of doing their work. This policy is from the Office of Management and Budget and is written in something called 2 CFR Part 200. Even though the federal government has rules about reimbursing nonprofits for overhead, not every state or local agency follows them. That means nonprofits get stuck paying for rent and admin out of their own pockets. The National Council of Nonprofits says this gap causes real problems like delays, stress, and budget shortfalls. It's like being asked to run a program without all the tools you need. When nonprofits build their budgets, they count on funding to cover everything, not just the direct stuff that like supplies or meals, but also the behind the scenes costs. If overhead isn't reimbursed, they have to shift money around, cut corners, or stretch the staff too thin. That's not sustainable. According to the Urban Institute, many nonprofits say they're constantly adjusting their budgets just to stay afloat. Because of the overhead myth, a lot of nonprofits feel like they have to hide their real costs. They want to look efficient, so they leave out things like rent or admin in their reports. This will make their finances look cleaner, but it's not the full story. According to the National Council of Nonprofits, this kind of reporting can hurt long term planning and make it harder to explain true costs to funders. When nonprofits get audited, they have to show exactly how they spend their money. If they leave out overhead, like the rent or admin, it can make things look off. Auditors might flag missing expenses or ask questions that are hard to answer. That's why honest reporting matters. According to the Office of Management and Budget, indirect costs are part of the total costs of running a program, and they should be included in all financial reports. This policy doesn't just help one type of nonprofit, it helps the whole third sector. That includes community groups, foundations, and social enterprises. These organizations do amazing work, but they often run on tight budgets. If they don't get reimbursed for overhead, they can't grow, plan ahead, or even stay open. Indirect cost reimbursement gives them a fair shot at being sustainable and honest about what it really costs to serve the people. This part really hits home for me. I use after school programs for my own kids, and I've seen how important they are, not just for learning, but for safety and support. These programs are run by nonprofits that get grants, but those grants don't always cover things like the rent and the admin or staff. That means the people running the programs are stretched thin, trying to do everything with limited resources. Indirect cost reimbursement could make a huge difference, not just for the staff, but for the families who rely on them. When nonprofits don't get reimbursed for overhead, things start to break down. Staff get burnt out because they're doing everything with limited support. Programs get delayed or cut. It's hard to keep up with the tech, training, or even basic compliance. According to the Urban Institute, many nonprofits say they're constantly stretched thin, and that affects the people they're trying to help. Nonprofits aren't just dealing with this quietly, they're speaking up. Groups like the National Council of Nonprofits are pushing for policy reform. They want states to follow the same rules as the federal government when it comes to overhead. Advocacy helps funders and lawmakers understand what it really costs to run a program. Change starts with education, and nonprofits are leading that conversation. So, what can we do? First, we need to stop thinking of overhead as waste. It's part of what makes programs possible. Second, we can support policies that reimburse nonprofits fairly, especially indirect costs. That means asking funders and lawmakers to follow the federal rules. And finally, we can talk about this, share what you've learned. The more people understand the real costs of impact, the more likely we are to fix the system. So here's the big picture. The overhead myth makes it harder for nonprofits to be honest about what it really costs to serve people. The federal government has a policy to fix that, OMB uniform guidance, but unfortunately, not everyone follows it. Nonprofits need fair funding to stay strong, plan ahead, and keep doing the work. If we understand that overhead is part of impact, we can help change the way people think about funding. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's that overhead isn't the enemy. It's what makes everything else possible. Nonprofits need fair funding, not just for supplies or meals, but for the systems and people that keep the programs running. When we rethink what efficiency means, we open the door to stronger, more honest, and more sustainable impact. Here are the sources I used throughout the presentation. They include national nonprofits, federal policy documents, and real world examples. I've also included one visual reference for the pie chart graphic on slide 2.